Hey folks, all right, well, welcome to lesson one to the introduction of shuffle drumming. Now, in order to understand shuffles or shuffle drumming in general, it's important to learn a little bit about the history behind shuffles and where they came from, and the fact how they are linked to primarily blues music or the style of blues or R&B or rhythm and blues. Now, there's a long history of blues, but just so you know, if you don't know already, most of American music developed in the southern part of the United States, primarily New Orleans, back in the early parts of the 1900s. And most of it came from immigrants or slaves coming through the port of New Orleans and being displaced all throughout the South, the fields of the South. There were religious ceremonies called ring shouts or field calls or field hollers, which became the lyrical base or the lyrical content to blues. And as you know, with blues, or if you don't know already, blues lyrics are very sad. They're about real life things, and usually they're not happy. The basis behind all of this started to develop the style and the form of blues as well. Now this is going to be covered a little bit later in some lessons as we go through the sequence. I'm not going to get into the form just yet, but I will discuss how the lyrics and the way that the words were situated helped form the idea of blues music in general. Now, most music in the early parts of the 20th century was swung. Now, you should know what swung or swing means. However, just to clarify, swung music is predominantly based on triplets. One triplet, two triplet, three triplet, four triplet. One triplet, two triplet, three triplet, four triplet, or one enda, two enda, three enda. Now, when we talk about a shuffle, we're talking about taking away the middle note of a triplet. So if you have three notes, we're talking about the first and the third note of a triplet. One and two and three and four, and one and two and three and four, and rather than filling up the whole triplet. And that really is the predominant basis or the backbone or the rhythm of shuffles in general. And then it eventually made its way onto the drum set and started to become the backbone to this style of music. In the 40s, the development of the electric guitar and also technology development of advances in audio, like microphones and amplification, started to demand the need of more sound and edge and pocket from the drums themselves. Now, at first, you had your standard swing rhythm, which I'll play for you right now. One, two, one, two, three, one. Now, that swing rhythm was dominated all the way through jazz. And when the shuffle started to be developed, which again is all the first and third notes of the triplet, the idea of the left foot on two and four became replaced by hand claps. And artists such as saxophonist Louis Jordan or vibist Lionel Hampton started to add that hand clap in their music. And as music even got a little stronger and demanded even more sound, the snare drum replaced the idea of the backbeat. Now you have a lot more sound. Now you have a full groove involved in your playing. But it wasn't that swing rhythm anymore. It was now the first and the third note of the triplet, which I will start to show you after this history is done of how the standard shuffle sounds. Now you had artists like Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and Ray Charles with I Got a Woman, and Roy Brown with Good Rockin' Tonight, where these are some of the earliest composers or songs that demanded the idea of the backbeat from the drum set in there. Now, when it turned into the 1950s, now the music started to get even bigger. And your early rock and roll artists like Elvis Presley and Buddy Holly and Little Richard and your jump swing artists like Louis Prima and Cab Calloway really needed that energy and excitement from the drums. And once was the two and four on the hi-hat, which became the claps, now is a big, strong backbeat on the snare. And again, the shuffle rhythm coming from your time hand. And now you have the full groove from the drums. And as you know, those early styles of music back then in the late 40s and early 50s for about 10 to 15 years pretty much were dominated by these shuffle rhythms. Then, once the blues and early rock and roll style was established, that style or that feel started to pervade all different types of music. So even today, in rock, in jazz, in constant forms of blues, and different subsections of blues, you're still hearing the shuffle. And we're going to cover some different subsections of shuffles as we go through these lessons. Now, I'm going to show you right now just your standard shuffle. Easy standard shuffle, and in later subsections, we are going to cover different styles, different variations, different techniques. If you want to start with just a standard shuffle, we're starting with the shuffle rhythm on the hi-hat. I'll play that for you right now, and that's with your time hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your standard shuffle rhythm. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, constant rhythm like that. Your snare drum is on 2 and 4, and we're going to play just a standard middle of the snare rhythm for that. And your bass drum is on 1 and 3, and I will get into these techniques in later lessons, but we're going to just sort of keep them simple for now. 1 and 3 in the bass drum, 2 and 4 in the snare drum, shuffle rhythm on the hi-hat. Sounds like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's your standard shuffle rhythm, and that's the rhythm that started to build upon all these different substyles of blues and early rock and roll as we started to develop music through the 40s, 50s, and 60s up until now. Stay tuned for upcoming lessons to show you variations and different techniques in this shuffle style.